Everybody, welcome back to Worth Fighting For, where we're covering HBO's The Last of Us. I'm Brian Moore, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Tamur. Tamur, how you doing?
Doing well, Brian. I'm doing well. Fortunately, we're a little bit late on the upload this week, but that was due to unforeseen, delays and circumstances. But I'm glad we are still getting it
Yeah,
out.
we
and
got stuck in
hopefully-
the snow.
Yeah.
Fortunately, a nice old couple were able to give us soup, send us on our way, and we found our way home now. So
Yeah,
excited
some
to be
fresh
covering.
rabbit soup.
Yeah, this is great, delicious, all things considered. Pretty nice trip.
Yeah, and hopefully this will last, hold people over until next week's episode.
Yeah, so I guess right off the top, what do you think of this one?
I liked it a lot. I mean, we can go into the story beats, but I think overall, I thought it was a really strong episode. A lot of the dialogue is lifted from the game, as we saw. A lot of the blocking. We got to see, Jacksonville, which is amazing because you don't actually see it in the first game. We got to see something which we've been asking for the last few episodes, which is Joel and Ellie's back and forths and just their relationship growing. So I thought it was really it was good timing and it was all around good episode.
Yeah, no, I agree. I love how they did incorporate a lot from the second game into this one. Really, established Jackson, maybe even introduced a character from the second one. That's up to debate. The internet was debating whether or not that was, who I'm sure it probably was. Very exciting there. But yeah, this was great. This was really the heart of what The Last of Us is. Like you said, Joel and Ellie building a rapport, building not a dependence, but depending on one another, counting on one another, and realizing that they need each other to go through this. And I thought it was an especially interesting and beautiful episode for Joel's character. He's a little different in this adaptation than in the game, for sure. He's a little older, for one. I believe he's 51 in the game. He's 56 in the show. He has a comment about how he would have ended that kid in Kansas City easily if he had been 5 years younger. I think that was kind of a little tongue-in-cheek to point out the age difference there. But yeah, this is I don't want to say softer Joel, but I think the circumstances are hitting him a lot harder. Where Joel in the game, he really was a efficient and ruthless killer, whereas this Joel probably more realistic. He's done some bad shit and he can handle himself for sure, but the evidence of the things that he's had to do to survive are all over him, and between not being able to hear very well anymore, just being slower, and then especially great in this episode, kind of seeing everything he lost, seeing that girl who looked like Sarah from behind, and seeing that girl have a daughter or a son, I couldn't tell, but having a child, and just kind of realizing that's what he lost in all this. He would have been a grandfather probably by now if life had remained normal. Sarah would have been in her 30s, and yeah, it's just and he's having physical I don't know if panic attack's the right word, but certainly the anxiety of potentially losing Ellie in a similar way is wearing on him, and I just thought it was really great.
Yeah, so two things come to mind. On that note, I do think the show is tackling deeper trauma when it comes to Joel's story. Like you said, the character actually is quite different. Pedro plays him differently, and I think they're using that as a way to explore trauma, PTSD, even depression. But like you said, he has these physical symptoms where he's worried for Ellie's sake, and I mean, really, he's having like these PTSD sort of flashbacks of his own daughter dying, and he wants to prevent that from happening again to the point where he's like, I can't continue to do this. I'm not strong enough, or at least he believes that's the case. The other thing is, like you mentioned, uh, they're constantly mentioning like he and Tess had to do these like dark things, and Tommy included. They had to do these really horrible things to get here. And I think this is actually the show's way of like making up for the fact that we aren't playing as Joel and we aren't like killing a lot of people, because there's only so much they can do within 9 episodes. And it would just be, frankly, boring, and it wouldn't really add to the plot if you were just constantly like sneaking around, or not you, but if Joel was constantly sneaking around and like killing people on the way, which obviously in a video game that's what you want to be doing because you want to be interacting, and it's not 100% about the story, it's about interacting with the game. So I think them constantly mentioning this, not only is it character backstory, which they've really hit home at this point, but it also, it really makes up for that fact that we're not seeing him do these things. And yeah, I mean, Pedro Pascal just really, he pulls it off. He is this really rough and tumble guy, but when he's alone with his brother, you see him break down, and you see that he is vulnerable, and he's like human, and he's actually worried about Ellie.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say enough good things about Pedro Pascal. I mean, we've said tons of good things. We could probably just have a whole hour of just like being like, God, he's so amazing. He's such a good
Yeah.
actor. He's so. There was actually the actor who plays Tommy. He said that in that scene, obviously, you're a filmmaker. You have different coverage for the different actors, so if the actor's not
Mm-hmm.
on the camera, they might deliver their lines not quite as
Right.
into it. But he was saying that Pedro Pascal like went for it in every take when he wasn't even on camera. He was like
Mm-hmm.
crying, and like he just was like talking about how generous he is as an actor for his like scene partners to have like the full emotion to act off of. And I just thought that was an awesome story, little
Oh,
behind the
that's cool.
scenes.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that, but that's interesting. It's funny. The only time, so I have seen Pedro Pascal in person once, but it was in a Shakespeare play in Central Park, and I don't know. I think hearing this story, it sort of makes me feel like that was his training. It's even if you're not the main character, like which in this play it was Much Ado About Nothing. He wasn't the main character. He was kind of a side character, but you still have to be on. You're on stage, even if like maybe like one person's looking at you. It could be like no one's actually looking at you, but you still want to be on. You're not like gonna even for a second turn that off. So, but that's great. Wow. Yeah, and he was also we should also mention he was on SNL this last weekend, and I mean definitely a different side of him, but like equally
Yeah,
as
he
charming.
does comedy very well, I will
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
The community table read where he was filling in for Walton Goggins in that episode. He was very fun in that. You get the meme of where he's
Mhm.
like laughing and crying, like in the
Right.
webcam. That's where that's from. And yeah, I mean,
That's great.
whew, just like put Pedro Pascal in everything, right? He's so
Yeah.
good, and I mean Hollywood is at this point. They're just like, yeah,
Yeah.
he's the man,
He's becoming
and
a household name for
I'm
sure.
happy for him. Obviously, I don't fucking know this guy, but I appreciate his work very much, and I had only really, obviously as a Buffy fan, I saw him on that in his short
Mm.
one episode stint on Buffy. But other than that, I had only seen him in Game of Thrones when I first became aware of him, and he blew me away in that
Mm-hmm.
as Oberyn Martell, and he's just from that moment he's never really let up in terms of being just like incredible.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
And on that note of acting, I think this this episode, last episode too, and certainly probably the next episode, Bella Ramsey has just also been bringing it so good as Ellie.
Mm-hmm.
I hope. I think I've said it like every podcast, but I hope the people who were like not believing in her are like, okay, I was wrong, because
Yeah.
Bella Ramsey is just a special talent, and I hope they continue to have a great career after this show ends, whenever that is.
Yeah, no, they're amazing. And, as we're talking about this, it really, for me, it brings back that scene, which is straight up lifted from the game, but it's done in an equally sincere way, which is the back and forth between Joel and Ellie, where he's saying, I will not continue with you. And, she feels abandoned. And she's like, everybody's left me except fucking for you, and she pushes him, and that's like, it's so funny because listening to the behind the scenes of The Last of Us, that wasn't the actual line when they first recorded it, with Ashley Johnson and Troy Baker, but
Also, two amazing actors.
oh yeah, incredible actors who set the stage for all this, but yeah, so apparently they loved that enough, and for me it was like, as soon as that was playing out, I was like, oh my god, this is like exactly the game. But it just kind of, it's interesting because it's like the actors were so good in their roles, the original actors I should say, that they were like, let's not adapt this original script, let's adapt this original scene as it was played out in the game, and even add in like that weird placement of the word fucking, which he's like, except fucking for you. And it's just like, that's not how you would like write a scene, but it works so well in the moment because it's like very natural. It's like you would just stumble over your words if you're like fighting with this like father figure or whatever. Yeah, I thought that scene was amazing.
Yeah, I think, of course, everyone who's a fan of the game saw in the trailer, and that's a big moment in the games.
Mm-hmm.
And so glad that the kind of so faithfully adapted it. And it is a little different because, different actors approach the scene slightly different, but it captured the same emotions. So that's really all that matters.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
And, other than that, Jackson was magnificent. They really did a great job bringing more in the second game. You get to see Jackson. In the first, you don't. I don't think you're just at a dam, right?
Yeah, you just go to that dam, which they do show in this.
Yeah.
But you really just like meet up with Tommy there. You see like his dog. You don't. Yeah, you don't. You don't. He
You
talks
get
about.
to pet the dog.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, he talks about the town, and he's like, "Oh, tonight's like movie night." But then here we actually get to see it, and I mean, as we know that there's going to be a season 2 at this point. I think it's kind of like,
Yeah,
I feel like they were pretty. I feel like they were pretty confident in this, and that's sort of why they put so much of a budget. Because it's like, why would they build this entire town for one episode of this HBO show? I think they were pretty confident, and they were like, all right, we can build this town that we'll use for seasons to come. Because this isn't really a spoiler because it's really straight up in the second game. It's featured, but I think they're kind of planning ahead.
Yeah, definitely. I thought the introduction of Marlene, way more to do in this. Marlene didn't have a big part in the first game at all. And I think, unless I'm forgetting anybody, our first Walking Dead actor on The Last of Us here. She was only in one episode. She played a non-comic book character, a friend of Michonne. But I love it. I love that she's here in The Last of Us. I mean, we've talked about. I love The Walking Dead, so anytime I'm the Leonardo DiCaprio meme pointing at the TV anytime a Walking Dead actor shows up in something.
So funny, yeah, and she was really great too. She has like such a fun voice. It's like almost like a radio voice, or like I don't know, like it reminds me of like, Yeah, I mean, I'm like fairly confident that she's a voice actress. I'm not really familiar with her work too much, but she just has one of those voices that's like so charming. It's great.
Yeah, she was great. I thought her back and forth with Tommy was really fun. They felt like a couple that
Mm-hmm.
when Tommy's explaining to Joel how Jackson works, and it's like, oh, everyone pitches in and everyone owns it. It's like communism, and Tommy's like, no, and it's like, yeah, no, it's a commune. We're doing communism. Like I loved that little
Oh, I
moment.
love that line too. Yeah, yeah, yeah. She's right, and it just kind of also shows that like Joel and Tommy, they're brawn. You know, they're. I mean, of course, they're street smarts, but like maybe it's not all there. It's just like, what's fuck communism? They're like Texans, but then she's like, no.
Yeah,
She's also telling Ellie like, you make a good lawyer. Like she's clearly got some brains, and that was just like a great way to show it in like a kind of a comedic way.
yeah, and then another great scene with her and Ellie, kind of talking a little bit about Joel and some of the things he's done, and like showing that Ellie doesn't really care.
Mm-hmm.
And then they added in a layer that's not in the game, where she's pregnant. So even more like
Mm-hmm.
one, even more reason for Joel to be like, no, I have to be the one to like go, but like, a little more stakes on the whole thing, and a little, the world is not completely over. It almost ended, but there's a future here in Jackson.
No doubt. I think that's really what they're hitting home with this episode is that this, Ellie and Joel could potentially just end their journey here. And um, I don't think either of them want that. I think particularly Ellie, she's like almost uncomfortable in this setting and she doesn't really know how to socialize. Um, but this is like endgame. This is like if they really wanted to, they could make a home here and be actually quite happy and content. But I think there's still some underlying issues that they both have to deal with. I mean, the fact that Joel lies about Tess being still alive when Tommy asks about her, I think that's like a big tell. He's not moved on. He's not really addressed it himself. Um, the fact that Ellie kind of just like growls at everyone around her and like even like we mentioned earlier with that like that character who you know is not confirmed but we're pretty sure it's like someone from the next game. um yeah, they're not like they're not ready to just settle down yet.
Yeah. Plus, Ellie needs to save the world, right? That's
Yeah.
her whole thing right now. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, it's nice to have this alternative because we saw Fedra and how that world works. We saw an overthrow of Fedra and that not work
Mm-hmm.
out. But now we actually see an alternative to, the violence and just having like people coming together and protecting each other and building something, which I thought was really great.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, I mean the fact that they're just like watching movies and there's all these like children, like I mean that wide shot of like all the kids like staring up at the screen was like, that's not what you expect to see when the world has ended, but it's just such like a
Yeah.
innocent sight.
Considering the last, in Kansas City, the last time a character like saw kids, she was ready to murder them. This is a nice change of pace from that, for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
Um, anything? Obviously, this episode was beautiful. The cinematography, like showing their journey to Jackson, was really great. I thought, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of showed like this journey. Yeah, it's only 9 episodes, but it's taking a long time for them, months for them.
Right.
Like Joel's boots are falling apart, um,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I loved all that. Are you ready to move on to the um, campus section?
No, and I'll tell you
Okay.
why.
Okay. Yeah.
Can I just nitpick slash critique slash criticize
Yeah.
It's one thing that just really did not work for me in this episode, which was okay. So we have Joel and Ellie. They fight like they do in the game, and it's pretty clear. Like Joel's like, "Yeah, I'm not taking you," and they're both upset. They seems like they probably don't even get much sleep. They're just very like upset with each other. And Tommy finally he does agree to bring Ellie. So they wake up early. They get ready to go, and then Joel's just like there, and he's clearly like changed his mind. Even though he sort of says her like, "Oh, okay, you deserve a choice." It's kind of like um, a passive way to be like, "Yeah, okay, I changed my mind. I do want to help you." But I don't know. I just thought this whole thing resolved way too quickly. It was really just like this build up, this very dramatic build up that resolved within one scene. And yeah, even just the conversation that Joel has with Tommy. I don't know. I think they could have extended this or at least made it more dramatic. I understand from like a storytelling point of view wanting to before you give the audience what they want, you
Mm-hmm.
should take it away from them, so that's
Do you
more satisfying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do
go
you
ahead.
think it's missing in the game? Tommy goes back to their house and gets a picture of Joel with Sarah. Do you think if we had a similar thing and Tommy gives Joel that picture after Joel and Ellie have the fight, do you think that would have been enough of a catalyst for you to like understand his change in mind?
I I think even then maybe no, but it may have helped because I think the way they translate that in the show is they have this like flashback. So like Joel's like sitting in bed, he can't sleep, but I think he's thinking of Sarah, and then we kind of get these like very dreamy sequences with her, which are beautifully shot and they're wonderful. But for me, it's like not enough to be like here's like the next scene and everything's been resolved. It was just like way too quick. I thought like in my head as I was rewriting it, Ellie and Tommy they leave together and they spend like half a day together and then maybe like they get into some trouble or they run into like some raiders or something and then we see that Joel did care and he came after them or I don't know. It just it felt like it was just resolved like way too quickly, and I do wonder if other people felt the same way. But yeah, from a storytelling point of view, I was like they could have milked this, and I think they should have.
Yeah, it could just be just limited time, I guess. Certainly
Mm-hmm.
limited budget. I've noticed some so
Mm-hmm.
like, and obviously we talked about it at the beginning. The way like you basically communicate in game like with the players through violent actions, which aren't needed in this, so we
Mm-hmm.
don't have as much infected, we don't have as many, action scenes. But even the scene that we're gonna get to later at the end, where Joel gets horrifically injured, is way scaled down from the scene in the video
For
game.
sure.
So I think like stuff like that is probably just like HBO didn't put as much money into the series as they maybe could have, just because they didn't know how big of a hit it was going to be, right?
Yeah. No, I do think when we look back at the season, we will believe that it's like severely lacking in action because it's based off of a horror action game that is heavily story based, but it's still an action game set in like the apocalypse. And we really only get a few episodes with the infected, and even less with like people, Joel and Ellie for fighting raiders. So yeah, I think obviously in the game they could have remedied that much more easily. Um, but yeah, as we're talking about, I'd really think like maybe Tommy should have gotten to the college or at least like to some point, and then Joel may have caught up with them or sort of helped them out get him out of some sticky situation or something. I think that would have paid off much more than, oh, he's in the stable and now they're just going to leave together after
Right.
like this huge dramatic fight build up. Yeah.
Yeah. No, hey, I mean, not perfect, right? It does a lot of things well, but it's not going to be a perfect adaptation. I am very interested to see how season 2 adapts, because the first game is violent. The second game is insanely violent.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna wonder if they're gonna scale that down as well. We'll
I
see.
imagine they will. Yeah. I'm thinking about that too, and I'm like, I feel like they're going to condense the second game down much, much more than even this first game, perhaps.
Mhm.
Yeah. Because I just don't know how they would. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to talk about without like spoilers. I just don't know how they would bridge these two like storylines.
It's a
with
lot
that.
bigger, than the
Yeah,
first
it's
game.
huge. Yeah.
I think it's like literally twice as like
Yeah.
long.
Mhm.
But yeah. So we get to move on to the college now.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. Rant
Cool.
over.
No, it was good. It was good. I'm glad I asked. I didn't just like plow ahead. Um, so yeah, I thought this was a cool, good adaptation of the college from the game. I thought it was also funny. I saw on TikTok months ago someone who went to school at that school being like, I think they're filming The Last of Us at my campus and just like filming
That's
a bunch of like the random setups and stuff. So it's cool to see that pay off now.
Yeah.
All this time later. But yeah, I thought it was neat. It's obviously like disappointing for the characters. The Fireflies have moved on. And, Joel's biggest fear in this episode is that he's not going to be able to step up and protect Ellie. And his fears kind of realized here, Like, the guy, the raider, I don't know if he's a raider. He's just a guy.
Yeah,
He takes a
super-
swing at Joel, breaks his bat, and in the ensuing scuffle, you have like this moment where like Joel kills him, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, Joel's like he's got this, and then he
Yeah.
fucking turns around and he has the bat. Also, if you ever find yourself in a post-apocalypse situation, you get stabbed, don't rip the thing out. That is one of the worst things you can do.
I was thinking that too. I was just
Yeah.
like, dude, just leave it for now.
Yeah.
And, like, run.
Yeah, and run, exactly. But yeah, that was tough. And for anyone who hasn't played the games, Jenny hasn't played the game, so she was like, "Wait, Joel died?" And I was like,
Right.
can't say anything,
Yeah. And I think judging by like what we think the next episode is gonna be based off the title, I think they're gonna have to like hold on to their
wondering,
seats even
yeah.
longer. Yeah, which is great. But yeah, the campus I thought was like perfect. It looks so much like the games, and and just that lead up to like the monkeys are making the noise was like really great. It's like, are they gonna be in trouble? Are they gonna find the fireflies? It was very uncertain, and the monkeys looked very real to me. I was like, sometimes the CGI could just like look like crap, but they really looked real.
Right.
And yeah, I was trying to remember. Maybe it's before this scene, but there's a song that plays that's from the game. Do you remember that? I think it's actually the song that plays at the very end of the first game.
Oh yeah.
So it's almost like
I'm taking a ride
conclusive.
with my best friend. That one.
Well, it's okay. So yeah, so there's two like song moments, I'd say. So that's like at the very end of the episode, which is a callback to like the end of the first episode. But I think this is maybe when they're like traveling and talking, and it's kind of like a happier time for them. Obviously happier than like Joel being stabbed. But it's like this song that I think ends the first game, which I thought was a really interesting choice. That they didn't just save it for the actual ending of the show.
Yeah.
But that almost says to me that they might change the ending of the show just in terms of what we see. So not so much the events that happened, but perhaps like even like with the episode with Henry and Sam, we got more than than the game showed. I feel like we may get a similar thing in the show compared to the game.
Yeah, it would definitely be interesting to see. And I'm really excited for the next episode and see that adapted.
Oh yeah.
We get more of Ellie's backstory, and it's called Left Behind, which is great because that's what the DLC for the first game is called. So we're getting it slotted in here in a place that will, like, narratively, I think, make sense. I some I see some people on Twitter. First of all, people they're just saying anything. They're like, oh, next episode's a bottle episode. That's not what a bottle episode is.
Yeah.
It's a flashback, sure,
Flashback. Yeah.
but not a bottle episode. But yeah, I'm very excited for the next episode.
Oh, me too. I remember reading the comic because like I think
Yeah,
someone can
it's
correct
Left
me if
Behind.
yeah, there was a comic
too.
and someone can correct me on this, but I think like they either came out like the same time or maybe like the comic came out before to like lead people up to it. But the comic was fantastic, and I remember I read that before I played the DLC, and yeah, it just adds so much backstory to Ellie because you don't see her, of course, before the game starts. Even though you get Joel's backstory, and I think people will really love it.
I do too. I think people will really enjoy it, and yeah. What else about this episode can I think of? The shooting scene, very fun between them.
Yeah.
Joel has a little like smile after he hits the bullseye. I don't know. I just loved that. And I'm always so impressed when filmmakers communicate stuff differently because you see him shooting it and you're like, oh, it's weird they didn't show the target, but then the scene ends with them riding past it. And you see he like hit it right in the middle, and I was like, yeah, that's way fucking better than just like showing the target immediately.
Totally. Yeah, that was super fun, and even just those scenes of them like on horseback, they kind of, equate to like those scenes in the game where you're, as Joel, you're maybe like setting up a ladder or whatever. You're like interacting with the environment to like move to the next part, but Ellie's talking to you. They were really like the equivalent of that. And yeah, really great bonding moments. I do have one more complaint, and if anyone's watched or listened to this podcast so far, they might know what I'm going to say next, which is that this was obviously Canada. Like to me, like especially like those first few scenes, and even before like Jackson, I was like, this is so painfully obviously Canada. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Canada's beautiful, so I understand why they filmed there.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Yeah, anything else that you wanted to touch on that we didn't?
No. I mean, I'm thinking about the next 3 episodes, and I think
7, 8, 9. Yeah, that's it. Oh man, that's crazy. We're almost done.
And it's gonna be a long wait until.
Yep. Yeah, it's gonna be really long.
It's gonna definitely feel long, but yeah, I'm thinking about the next 3 episodes and kind of blocking out the story, the chapters, and I think next episode is gonna be great, and then the episode after that I think is gonna be very dark, very good, and then of course we're gonna have like an explosive ending, but it's gonna be great.
Yeah, it should be. I do feel like it's gonna, especially with episode 7 being kind of a standalone flashback episode. The last 2 episodes are. I just hope they're not like. I don't know how to put it. Hopefully, it doesn't feel like too fast. Because there's a good amount of story left that they could tell. But we'll see. I have faith that they'll do a good job with it.
I worry about that too, especially like I said earlier with regards to season 2, like setting up the events of the second game. I'm like, how much can they squeeze in before we get like this part 2 storyline? But yeah, I'm pretty confident in the writers as well.
Yeah. There's one very iconic section from the game, which I think maybe they might just cut out entirely because it's
Talking about
very gameplay. The tunnel area before like the end of the game, like the second to last level, you're in a tunnel, just
it's like the hardest part of the game.
It's so fucking hard.
Yeah.
And like maybe that's not going to communicate as well, like because from a gameplay perspective, it was awesome and scary and like really, like you said, really hard. But maybe they don't need to do that. Maybe they can kind of streamline through that, and that will speed stuff up. We'll see.
I have a feeling they would skip that too. I also wonder if they'll have the zoo/giraffe part. That's like such a magical moment.
They'll definitely have it. There's a giraffe picture behind Joel in this episode in the room on the wall. They're teasing it like left and right. They better have the giraffe scene.
It's like going to be like a touchdown moment for like Last of Us fans. It's like, yeah, giraffe, woo! Everyone's cheering.
Oh man, for people who haven't played the game, they're probably like, what the fuck are they talking about? You'll see.
Yeah, no, right. Joel and Ellie they ride a giraffe.
Yeah,
it's like amazing.
Oh man. All right, Tamur, anything you want to promote, plug, anything like that?
Yeah, check us out on YouTube. Wicked Good Everything, Better Radio Podcasts. We've got videos, we've got comedy sketches, we've got all that good stuff.
Covering a lot of TV. We were going to cover Big Brother Canada today. They announced they're not going to have live feed, so Ben not wanting to do it. We'll see. We'll see if the Have Not room comes back.
This is the tea. Tea's being spilled live.
He's the expert here. I'm just, I'm just there to keep the show moving. So if he doesn't want to cover it, we're gonna have to wait till the summer to talk some Big Brother.
Gotcha.
But other than that, you can follow me on Twitter at @theFakeBMar. That's BMARR. I don't tweet too much. I retweet a lot of stuff, especially a lot of stuff about The Last of Us, because I'm obsessed with the show. I think it's so fucking good.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And House of the Dragon. I retweet a lot of House of the Dragon stuff. That was like my favorite show from last year. So, thank you all so much for watching and listening, and we will see you in the next one.